Hey guys, Kit here of Burn One. I'm joined with Niko, our residential Goblin Slayer expert.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you've played like every list possible at this point, right?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. So he's gonna go over. I guess is this? You think this is gonna be your list for English, or who knows?
I
Maybe.
think some cards are gonna change out, and I might change the ratio on a few things, all depending on kind of like my discussions with other people who are thinking about playing this deck. But
Yeah.
yeah, the shell is gonna be the same. I think the ratios are the only thing that's gonna be different.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. I guess we'll jump into it and save all the other juicy stuff for the end, like matchup information or anything like that.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
We
We'll
can
just.
run this through real quick then.
All right. Yeah. Just go ahead and start with zero, I guess.
All right. So we have one of the energetic childhood friend Cowgirl. It's a salvage brainstorm. We have four of the early play condition and the on death Rize, True Bond's Goblin Slayer. It also has a pretty decent alarm effect where you can look at two at the top or at the start of your climax phase. We have one of the really good card called A Moment of Peace Cowgirl. This lets you ditch a torch to salvage a card and ditch a climax to salvage a card. It's really, really good. Then we have four of the Chaser, Predetermined Outcome Goblin Slayer. If you have five or more cards, he gets one level, 1500 power, and the opponent can't side attack this card, and then he chases at the start of the attack step, your opponent's attack step. We have two of the tap self search brainstorm, and then whenever you trigger check a climax, you can give one of your characters 2k power. We have three of the beloved Archbishop Sword Maiden on attack, power pump something 1500. You can choose itself. And then at the beginning of your encore step, if this is the only card that's not rested on your stage, you can rest this card. You can pay one and rest this card, rather. Then we have two of the promo Cowgirl. It's got two really good effects. It's the Arisu from Cinderella Girls set 2, if you guys remember that. Comes into play, top check. If it's an order character, you can add it to hand, ditch one. And then you can ditch an order character from your hand to draw a card. And then we have one of the Drop Searcher, and then it also has the effect of Scry on play.
All right. Yeah. I guess. Um, I feel like this is basically a super standard level zero game, right?
Yeah, it is for the most part. It's fairly malleable, I'd say. You can change the ratios around. Like if you wanted to, you can probably not even play the salvage brainstorm and pump the normal brainstorm up to 3. You can be extra spicy, although it would kind of change the way how you would shape your hand a little bit and cut the on death Rize down to 3, and maybe give like your drop torch, drop climax salvager an extra slot, so on and so forth. But yeah, this is fairly standard.
So I know we've discussed this before, but I'm sure some of the people that watch the channel don't know about this discussion. So I see zero Goblin Slayer Rickies. Do you want to go why you don't play that in this list?
Yeah, I think we discussed this in our set review. Ricky kind of sucks. Well, I shouldn't really say suck, but Ricky's not really a good option. I feel like when it comes to Priestess, the only thing you're really going to be searching for with the Ricky is like the 1/0 Goblin Slayer, and you already have so many other good tools you can use to find him. Like you have Torch Mills you can keep in hand, you have On Death Rize, you have Salvagers, you have Brainstorms, you have Searchers. Like, I just don't think the Ricky's necessary. Plus, the Ricky's undervalued, or not undervalued, but like understated at 1/5, which is kind of relevant, and it can only search out Goblin Slayer, which is also pretty relevant because Goblin Slayer only makes up kind of like one part of your level 1 game.
Yeah, and then like of course another reason is just like if you choose to go the Priestess route, the list is very tight, right?
Yeah,
So you
so you more or less have like 8 slots dedicated to Priestess. So, well, you can. I talked to Carmen about it. Maybe you can drop it down to 7 if you're feeling a little spicy, but realistically, you're going to be having 8 if you're playing standard.
yeah, it just it just eats up so many slots having to play the early play condition that you don't have the luxury of playing like that type of tech card.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, I think the level 0 is pretty standard. Yeah, nothing really much else to go in there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty standard too. Once people start playing more, they'll see that.
Yeah.
And go ahead and get into level one then, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So for level 1, we have 4 of the really good card, Unwhiffable Climax combo, unless you're extremely unlucky. Gets two gets 2k power if you have 2 or more other order characters, and then whenever the gate's in the climax zone on attack, you can declare either to search your deck for a torch or salvage a torch from your waiting room. I don't know why they printed this card. Next card, we have one of a little kindness switch. It's a level 1 bomb, and then on attack you can look at 2, choose one to put on top of your deck, and discard the other one. We have one of the like anti-move gear kind of torch, if that makes sense. You can, if you have a Goblin Slayer on board, you can play this card and then pull your, or just reposition your opponent card on their stage if there's open positions. This can be relevant in certain matchups, like Albuta. We have 2 of the 2K counter, good card. 2 of the global 1K back row on your opponent's turn, and a power pump by 1K for 2 of your characters whenever you place a climax. Also good card. And then 3 of the Mill Fork characters torch. This level 1 game for the most part is also super standard. We do include one of the Suicide Witch in there, but I also think it's not real spicy tech. It's just a good card.
Yeah, it kind of just fills out those games where you don't like tri-field Goblin Slayer or have any like really good attackers, or maybe you need to kill something that you're like afraid of counter range, probably, right?
Yeah, that, and I feel like a lot of the times, like in certain matchups, I would say you're kind of giving up your center slot. I would say in particularly probably against like Albuta and AOT in particular. The center slot can kind of be a little rough power-wise to maintain, so you just throw this in there instead and kind of like force your opponent to give up a card in the center.
Yeah, and you kind of have like that spiciness of like, oh, I didn't hit my gate this turn. Well, if I top check Sia pants, put it back on top and trigger it, you can do like spicy things like that, right? But
Yeah.
generally, it's just kind of like almost a filler there.
Yeah, it's a filler, and you can definitely, if you wanted to, you can take out this card and then throw in another kind of like good utility level 0.
Yeah, or if like maybe you want to add more utility anywhere, another event on something.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally, I mean, I think we've talked about this so much. Like the reason we play Goblin Slayer is because it's level 1 combo, right?
Yeah, unwhiffable combo's pretty good. If you have like the ideal board of like, at the very least, I shouldn't say ideal, but a good board of like 2 Goblin Slayers and the Priestess back row, they're just 107Ks for no real reason other than, yeah, they're just 107Ks, which kind of forces your opponent to either also have a good board or like start like side attacking you or, crashing into you if they just can't contest you. And then if they choose to crash into you, you also snipe their back row with a 1-0 torch. So.
Yeah, I think like this combination of the combo, the like general power level of it, plus this like force torch, just makes it really spooky. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like generally, if people want to avoid this, they have to side your level 1s if they can't get over it.
Yeah.
And then and if they are
and
over
even
it,
then it still kind of sucks, right? Because even if like you bomb the Goblin Slayer, you still probably resolve the combo and you have the move gear torch in your hand, so
yeah, and
there's still an empty slot where you can snipe their back row.
yeah, even let's say you do have the 7K wall up, they have to worry about 2K counter existing as well, because if they can't get over 9K, they lose their card and then they lose their brainstorm, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's just very disruptive, so it makes the level 1 very awkward for your opponent if they're trying to play around the move torch. But yeah, I guess level 2, nice and simple.
Yeah, it's nice and simple. So we run one of the 2-1 anti-change counter. It's a 2500 backup, and then ditch 2, kill one of your opponent's higher level characters. And then we have Always Together Priestess. It gives all your character 2K power, and then bonds to the TD Goblin Slayer with a ditch bond. So I would say if you're not really into the 1-0 Witch, you can probably up the anti-change counter up to 2. Just kind of like an immediate change I can see there that you can make, just because I'll probably say certain matchups in English might convince you to run 2 of this card.
Oh, of the anti.
Yeah, the anti-change. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid card. I mean, generally, I guess with the game plan of Priestess, we're looking for like double Priestess at level 2.
Yep.
You'd say most of the time. So like being able to draw into the anti-change is pretty powerful.
I mean, a lot of the times you'll probably be able to find it, but
I mean, with how the deck works,
I think that consistency is fine, and even then, a lot of the times you might not even use it for the anti-change. You might just use it for that extra power pump.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we
Yeah, I
can,
mean,
I guess, move on to the level 3.
yeah, super,
The
super.
level 2 lineup. We can more talk about like your turn-by-turn plays at each level
Yeah.
after this. So for level 3, we have one of the early play Goblin Slayer. It has an almost fake early play condition. If you have 4 or more characters, it gets -1 level in hand. It gets 500 power for each character during your turn. And then on play, you can ditch a card to search an event from your deck, which is pretty good. Next, we have one of the Passionate Yearning Sword Maiden, Global 1500, heals on play, and then you can rest this card to look at the top 2 cards of your deck and rearrange them however you want. 4 of the early play Priestess, if the Rize, on death Rize is in clock, it gets -1 level in hand. Draw 2 dishes, 1 on play, and then climax combos with the pants on attack. You top check. If it's a character or an event, you get 1500 power until the end of your opponent's turn, and then at the start of their attack step, you neg soul their board by 1. This stacks. We have one of the Resurrection event. It's a 3/4. You can discard a Sword Maiden, and you can discard a Priestess, and then you can choose up to 5 cards in your clock and put them into your waiting room, and then put this card into your memory. The neat effect is you can choose, so if for whatever reason you're at like 3/6 or something, and then your first card is a climax, you can pay that out of there, which is kind of neat. And then finally, we have 2 of the 3/2 Goblin Slayer. Your opponent can't play backup from hand, and then whenever you kill something with this card during your turn, you can pay 3 and burn 2.
Okay, yeah. So this is a pretty standard level 3, right? Maybe I guess maybe the TD level 3 might be questionable-ish.
So I actually do think it might be a little questionable in English, but I'm gonna test it for now. You can kind of like maneuver some stuff around to maybe fit in yellow and run the Musashis instead. But this is okay in all but like 2 of your matchup. Well, I shouldn't say 2, all but 3 of your matchups. The problem is all of those matchups are top tier decks that you have to consider when playing this game, so that's a little unfortunate. But yeah, this is pretty weak since it only turns off backup. It doesn't turn off counter, so your opponent can still move gear, your opponent can still foreclosure you, and your opponent can still drop money counter and Sal on you.
Yeah, I'm wondering actually if maybe playing multiple resurrections would be better in this slot almost, but I guess
Oof.
testing might find out after that. I think you'd probably have to fudge some of the Sword Maiden numbers, I think, in the deck, definitely. But
I think the Sword Maiden count is actually fine because you have 4.
yeah.
And then if you're keeping board, it's fairly easy to like understand if you're going to need to resurrect or something. So you can just hold like one of the Sword Maiden, and then you have so many priestesses in your
Yeah, you just
just
kind of
like
just have
available
always have
to
a
you,
priestess.
so you can just hold that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we'll get into I guess your matchups. Like the spread for this deck, I mean, do you think it's I think we're kind of all in agreement like Goblin Slayer is kind of like the not I don't want to say like the new boogeyman, but definitely one of the top contenders coming for this next season, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be on this, and yeah, I think you're right. It's not going to be a boogeyman, but this is definitely what's the term? What would be the term? Like kind of like a noob crusher deck, where if people don't know how to play around this deck properly, they're going to get smashed.
Yeah. And then I guess one thing before we kind of break. Oh, I guess now we'll worry about that later. Let's just break down the levels and like how does like normal game flow play for this deck?
Sure. So a lot of the times, if you're going first, a good play to make is drop like a Rize or a Cowgirl in the front row, and then if you have it, drop the Chaser in the back row. This kind of you at level 0, I think the most important thing you can do is buy more turns, so you can force your opponent to play a slow game. So if you only leave them 1 card to kill, um, if they decide for whatever reason to play 2 and push damage, a lot of the times you're just going to be able to chase it down with a predetermined outcome and kill that card, kind of slowly building your advantage up over the game.
Yeah, especially if players like run into this and they don't like really pay attention to your board or are used to the matchup, and this card's in the back row, and then they just like fill 2 cards, and then you just run this in front of it. It just feels really bad for them
Yeah.
because they have to lose the card at that point because they can't side, right?
Yeah, at that point they wouldn't. Their only other play is like to not attack, but then why would they even do that?
Yeah.
Otherwise, level 0, like I said, it's your buy time turn. Ideally you want to have like 2 or 3 turns at level 0 if you can. But sometimes your opponent just kind of unga bungas you, and you're forced into level 1.
Yeah. And then when you hit level 1, where do we go from there? I mean, I think this plays obvious, right?
Yeah, so you try to set up a board. A lot of the times, obviously, you try to go for triple Goblin Slayer if you can. But 2 Goblin Slayers and a whatever card, or even like 2 Goblin Slayers and a Witch is good. Being at 1-0 can be a little iffy for this deck, depending on the matchup, because a lot of the times you're not going to have access to that really sweet back row card that gives you a global 1k and then power pumps 2 characters by 1k whenever you slam a climax. So you want to be careful of that. But ideally, like if you're at 1-1 and you have both colors, red and blue, available to you, a good board would be 2 Goblin Slayer level 1s, a Witch, one of your Brainstorms, and then the 1-0 back row.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's basically the ideal deck state, right? So
yeah. And then from there, you're typically, if you have like counters and stuff after that, that's even better.
Yeah. And
to protect your board on defense.
One of the strongest things about the deck, right, is the fact that you get the torch and that it's a counter.
Yep.
Yeah, so at level 1, like when people are attacking to you, are we looking to like mill the deck out and get like solid refreshes at 1/6 constantly, or how do you
it all depends on matchup, deck state, and all that, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the times, like if you are like, let's say if you're having like a really, really good game or whatever, and you're like 4 and 15 cards or something, why would you like force mill your deck at that point where you have all these cancels available to you?
Yeah.
A lot of the times, so there, I think the best play you would make is just to try to save as many Goblin Slayers as you can with your counters, and then if you can, slam another gate and maintain that board for a turn. But like I said, it's all matchup dependent there.
Yeah, and then so like we're heading into level 2. I think obviously the play here is we're looking to play the Priestess, right?
Yeah, so ideally you want to be like 2-0 or 2-1. You want to slam that Rize into clock, slam like 2 Priestesses down. A good kind of board at this stage would be 2 of the Priestesses and 1 of the 2-1 back. That way your Priestesses are going to be 11k on defense base. And if they pass their top check, they'll be 12-5, which is really, really strong.
Yeah, but usually the first turn you play Priestess should pass the top check unless you get really unlucky, right? Because you do get the alarm effect right off the Rize.
Yeah, so ideally you're going to be getting the alarm effect off of the Rize. So even if you reveal like 1 climax in there, you just change your attack order up a little bit. And, if you hit 2 climaxes after that, it's a little unlucky, but,
Yeah, well, that's Weiss.
Yeah.
Yeah, so are you ever looking to like Tri-Field Priestess, or what do you think?
At
level 2, that
probably
is.
not. In certain matchups, you probably could.
Yeah.
I think your first turn, a lot of the times, you're also not going to have enough stock to just Tri-Field the Priestess, to be quite honest with you. I think if you're able to like successfully Tri-Field the Priestess and then like, even play like one of the 2-1 back row supports, you're having a really good game.
Yeah.
And you're already probably in a very, very strong position to win just from there.
Yeah, it's kind of like you don't want to, commit too much to the board and then lose everything by chance, right?
So honestly, the biggest weakness of this deck is if your Priestesses get answered in almost all lanes, you feel really bad. And from that point in the game, you're just kind of almost like fielding shitters.
Yeah, it gets kind of tough from there. But yeah, basically, but then transitioning into level 3, we're just like on the same game plan for the most part, right?
Yeah. I don't know how this is going to work with the new time rules, but like your main game plan of this deck is to like not really stall your opponent out, but like last your opponent out if you can.
Yeah, so we're just looking to mitigate damage, and then like maybe we get some lucky swings in with Priestess, or if like our opponent's really weird and they like don't crash their cards into Priestess, even if it's swinging for 0, then
man,
you're super happy, right? At that point.
Yeah, at that point you just side their level 1s and level 2s all day with Priestess.
Yeah, speaking of siding, like when you hit level 2, like you're completely fine with siding, right? Or Is this something you should
Once
consider
again,
a lot?
it's matchup dependent. You should consider it. A lot of the times, you probably want to be fronting.
Mm-hmm.
Especially so against decks that can't really like, how would you say it? I guess maintain a good hand
Mm-hmm.
without keeping some board. You probably want to front and start putting the pressure on.
Yeah.
Because at that point you can just even have like 2 priestesses and one of the 1/0 goblin slayers on board.
Mm-hmm.
And if they decide to leave their board up, you just start killing their back row on top of killing their character. So
Yeah, and then like moving on to level 3 again. Like I think like from what we have here is obviously pretty obvious, right? Like you get an unfortunate turn of taking a lot of damage. You have resurrection to correct your clock, right?
yeah,
And then
people shouldn't be afraid to try to like get not full value from this. So if you're like at 3/3 or like 3/4 against like certain decks, you slam this bad boy down anyway, just so that they can't kill you. Like especially against AOT or whatever, you don't want Mikasa fucking your shit up. So from there, you just try to heal down to 3/0.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, people shouldn't always be too greedy with resurrection. Try to get the full 5 or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually 3 is more than enough, right?
Yeah. Once again, matchup dependent, but yeah, 3's from 3 on, it's not a bad play.
Yeah, and then we have Sword Maiden here, just to confirm more top checks as well
This
as like
card
rearrange.
Sucks, but you gotta play it. Worst fucking character, but this is like the only heal you're able to run without feeling too bad.
Yeah, the only other heal really is the TD Priestess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like if you're playing Resurrection, you don't need the TD Priestess as bad.
No, you don't.
Yeah, and then like obviously our way to like kind of close out a game here is the trial deck level 3. Get some extra points of damage in there on reverses. And I guess this combos really well with the maneuver torch, or not maneuver, but like the force torch that moves things, right?
Yeah, especially if they leave like empty board, you can just this is also fulfills that name requirement for having a Goblin Slayer on board.
Yeah, and
just snipe their back row.
If they run into something too, you can like move out their level supports and stuff like that, so their level 3s lose power, so you can guarantee reverses everywhere.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the other plays you can make, which is why, man, this 1/0 torch is so strong. So another good play you can make is if you're playing against a bad Albuta player and they have this fucking Futaba in the front row center slot, but for whatever reason they decided to give up one of their side lanes, what you can do is you can just torch the Futaba to one of these side lanes and it no longer becomes a bodyguard.
That is a play that can happen. Yeah.
Power, right? Doesn't it have to be in the center?
It has to be in the center to gain power as well. So it becomes a really easy target to reverse. It's something that people might not consider because they've never played against Goblin Slayer, but it is something where
it's a more like out of the box play.
Yeah, if you see this, like Albuta can no longer crash lanes in the side because they don't have to worry about being direct attacks or anything. But no, they have to now consider like if they lose the side lane, then their Futaba wall can be torched away, which is really, really bad.
Yeah.
And then, like, the final card here, I think, I think you and I and even Carmen and stuff, we talked about this a lot, including this early play Goblin Slayer.
It's really, like, it's a good supplementary play at level 3 if you have the stock for it. It searches for the resurrection, too. That's mainly what it's there for. But sometimes it's not even there for that, because you can also, like, if you don't have the 1/0 maneuver gear torch, you can search for that and kill their back row and shit, so... I think it's a good inclusion.
Yeah, there's like some cute plays.
But this is certainly a what I would call, I guess, a malleable slot to where you can toss in something else if you really wanted to.
Yeah, it definitely has those cute plays of like I search torch, so I can use a moment of peace cowgirl to get 2 cards that I want. You can do some little wacky plays like that, or if you need to mill your deck, you find torch or whatever. But it's generally there because you're playing resurrection at 1. To like find the resurrection if you don't get it off of the priestess draws, right? Yeah. I guess Is there for like this deck overall? Do you feel like there's any horrible matchups or anything like you should be worried about? Or
Konosuba's kind of iffy because you just kind of crush them at level 1 and even level 2 to some certain extent, depending on what they're playing. But at level 3, you just kind of want to kill yourself. So there's that. Because your priestesses don't do shit. Yeah. Your fucking finishers don't do shit. So you're just feeling really bad at level 3.
Yeah, but overall, like you went every other deck has like a at least an even matchup. You would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's like horribly loses to other than like you getting incredibly unlucky and like never passing top checks with Priestess level 3, right?
And I think, well, so of course there's the luck factor, but you're
Mhm.
able to manipulate your luck, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
especially on level 3, you should a lot of the times be playing to have the Sword Maiden on board, despite it
hmm
being a shitty card and a shitty character. Um, but with that card on board, you get to check your trigger. The alarm at level 2, you should be having like your first turn of Priestess in there anyway.
hmm
Uh, if you're revealing 2 climaxes off of that, yeah, that fucking sucks, but it shouldn't be happening too often. So
yeah.
there's a way to manipulate that luck, but I mean, if you're Dean, you're just probably always revealing 2 climaxes off of this. So not
That's true.
recommended for low rolling players.
I think one thing other to talk about before we kind of close this out is an ordinary piece cowgirl. Like I've only played the deck like a handful of times, and I feel like this card for this particular deck is really powerful.
And card's fucking good.
Yeah, I feel like it lets you have a higher opportunity to get double priestess off like 2 turns in a row after you play the first set. At least that's what I feel like from having this card, as well as it's just amazing hand fix. Playing it early, you can have higher chance. You get more draws basically to find your gate as
It
well.
helps you get for your level 1 combo if you don't have
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I don't know how good Cowgirl is in every other build. I feel like it's probably should be included in most builds, but
I think I've
definitely,
included it in pretty much every single build.
yeah.
You obviously don't run it as like more than a 2 of, but the card is just overall really strong,
hmm
really flexible, and just always earns a slot for me anyway.
Yeah, I feel like in the standby you could probably cut this to 1 and it'd be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think in Priestess, at least this card's incredibly like powerful, so it has so much value. Just being in the level 0 slots there. I think that is it. Is there anything else you want to talk about this deck before we let everyone go?
Just the free fresh promo that's going to come out, I think, in the shop challenge circuit.
Yeah.
You're probably going to want to consider running 1 copy of that, and like I said, you're probably going to take one of those malleable slots and throw that in there.
Yeah, that's something worth considering too. Because I mean, how do you feel about stock with this? This deck can build decent amount of stock after a while, right?
Yeah, so if like you're managing to play your game plan properly, you can build a decent amount of stock because a lot of the times, like you're not going to need to brainstorm every single turn. You have torches that let you mill for that. You should be plussing on board somewhat,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're having a really rough game. Both of your climaxes are plussing triggers, so on and so forth. And then once you drop Priestess, you shouldn't be losing board, and if you are, that just sucks. So
Yeah.
I think the big kind of how this deck plays, it's in a lot of the other decks, like the standby variant and even the 8 gate variant,
hmm
you're keeping your stock kind of saved up until you hit level 3. Whereas in this one, you're dumping a lot of your stock at 2.
Yeah. I always like describing this deck this way. I don't know if everyone like really agrees with it, but I think both the standby and the priestess builds are both quote unquote like defensive types of decks. But this is more of like a proactive version of being defensive, whereas the standby version is a reactive version of being defensive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
I think that's like a fair way to characterize both of those decks. I don't know about you. Maybe we can get into this right before you leave, but I feel like both decks are similarly powered, and like taking either one into an English meta, I don't know if there is like a right or wrong choice. What do you think?
Uh, I personally would play Priestess in the English meta just because I think a lot of the times your matchups are going to be
hmm
slightly better. Like I said, I think you might honestly cut the 3/2 Goblin Slayer TD in English just because you have those bad matchups running around, and then you find a way to finagle some Musashis in there just to have
hmm
better finishing power and that utility with the bounce if you need it.
Yeah. What do you think the standby variant has like lacking compared to this one as far as like matchups?
Matchup, I mean, Konosuba's still a really rough matchup. AOT can be really, really shitty because a lot of the times at 3, you're going to be clutching on that 3/3 bounce event. And I don't want to say, like, obviously this is kind of a quote unquote lucky play, but if AOT triggers wind on you and bounces your 3/2 witch back row, you no longer fulfill conditions for the bounce event, and you no longer have damage scry. So you're just kind of fucked dead in the water there.
Yeah, that's really true. That's one thing about this deck overall
Even
too.
Konosuba, like if they don't have a way to like Megumin you, like Megumin clock kick you or whatever, they can still just kind of foreclosure you and tell you to get fucked, and that you can't react with the bounce event that way either.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's like a good thing you brought up in the end though too, is that we have to consider in English that more people will be teching some type of bounce like even during main phase. So like Albuta
like
has it and other
Fate.
stuff. Fate has it.
Albuta has it.
Yeah,
Fate has it.
they have
Bang
ways.
Dream has it.
Yep. So then you end up with not fulfilling the condition of the 3/3 event. Of course, you're like welcome to play it if you feel like your meta or whatever obviously doesn't care about bouncing to the board, but it becomes incredibly hard to do anything with the 3/3 event, especially when you're like searching it out yourself. With like, say, example in the standby list, you're like the 2/0 event, grabbing the 3/3 event, or searching it off the 3/2 early play. Your opponent knows it's going to be in your hand, so they know they have to bounce at least one character, right? It's really tough. Oh,
Yeah.
Persona also has like bouncing combos and stuff like that as well. So the 3/3 event is really awkward in English. And I forget, does the 3/3 event target?
It does target, so you're still getting fucked by AOT.
Yeah, AOT once again. You gotta just take that
Fucking
shaft.
AOT. AOT privilege.
Oh
in English,
man,
boys.
yeah, yep. We just gotta bend over and take it. But yeah, I think we hit everything involved in this deck. Oh, one last thing. I keep seeing random things here. The drop search is really good too, with just confirming top checks, right, for Priestess.
If you don't have any other options available to you, you can also use the drop search just as like a shitter in one of your like other lanes. And since it lets you top check, you still get that information.
Yeah. But I think that's the final thing. I'm not going to add any more. But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Once again, thanks to Niko for all his Goblin Slayer knowledge. I mean, you've been playing this deck for like a year now, right?
Shoutouts to Riaz for reminding me of that Musashi might be better in English.
Oh, yeah. Besides that, though, guys, we'll see you guys in the next video later. Before you go, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel if you do enjoy our content, as it does help us grow, and check out some of these social media links below.